Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your class for today. We are getting set up, all ready to go, starting up in just a couple minutes. If you are watching this on a recording, you don't need to fast forward too far. We will be up and running pretty soon. All right, and good morning to everyone. It is 9 o'clock, so we will get started and get started right away. So what we're going to do first is go over from last day. This is one of our last lessons. As you may have heard, I'll explain more later, we are back in the classroom next week. Well, I am anyways. Your attendance is not mandatory. You are welcome to come. I will be having a sign-up, sign-in sheet later in the week. I'll go through today's lesson. Wednesday, there is no class. Friday will be our last online class. And then we are done the year. The rest of the year will be review. I'll go over that with you at the end of today's lesson. So let's get started and let's see how to do the Mr. Klein problem. Mr. Klein had a bike and there was his bike wheel. And if you remember the details from that, the wheel had a radius of 25 centimeters. So from the center up 25 centimeters, down 25 centimeters. It's that simple. If you, all these questions are done the same way. You get your diagram and then you just start labeling the diagram as you're going through it. What else did we know? The wheel went around every 4 seconds. But think of where the rock actually starts. If you're going around if you're a rock that's sitting there and Mr. Klein's wheel goes over and you get caught in the bike wheel, is it clear to you that the rock started on the bottom? The rock started on the ground. Is it also obvious to you that the center is exactly 25 centimeters off the ground? With all the Ferris wheel questions, you didn't get on when you were on the ground. You went up some steps to get into a cabin or some little caboose thing. But a bike wheel, it is right on the ground. Amazing. So let's go through some things. You start right there on the ground. And so that's where t is 0. So just like all the other questions as well, let's start to get some points. You start at the bottom. That's called t equals 0. T equals 0 just means where you start. And at t equals 0, you are on the ground because the bike wheel is actually touching the ground. Now the wheel starts to go around, and notice it doesn't matter which way it goes. If you think of the wheel moving around towards the right or to the left, either way, you'll end up at the center position. Since the wheel takes 4 seconds to go around, this must be 1 second into it because it's going to take 2 seconds to go halfway around. This must be 1. And from there, what height are you at? You are exactly 25 centimeters above the ground because that's the radius of the wheel. Neat. Now, you are at the top. How long did it take you to get to the top? That took 2 seconds. What height are you at? You got the 25 plus the 25. You're now up to 50. And then you are here. And what happens there? Well, you are back in the middle. So at time equals 3, you're back to 25 seconds. And then time equals 4, you've gone all the way around. You are back on the ground. All your circle questions are done the same. Time is 0. Where are you? Then figure out how the time moves around a circle. And you divide that by 4. This was 4 seconds. So dividing it by 4, my stops are going to be at 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then look at your heights. Where are you above ground? So we've got all these points. Now we're going to plot these points, and it's going to be phantismo. So here it is. Mr. Klein's bike. Our points will be at 0, 0, 125, 250, 325, and 4, 0. We plot those points very nicely. First, we make our x-axis. And then we make our y-axis. And then look at your x points. You're going to need 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got your 0, you got 1, you got 2, you got 3, and you got 4. Just like that. And then we are set to go. We can now make our y points. Look at the y values. You're going to need 0, 25, 50. We already got our 0 right there. We got 25 and we've got 50. So there's our points. So now you slap your points on the graph. 0, 0, it goes there. 125, there. 250, there. 325, and 4, 0. Notice that looks like an upside down letter V, but don't make it an upside down V. Remember, it's a curve. You make it circular. So those middle 3 points should look like the top half of a circle. The little guys at the bottom should look like the bottom part of a circle. So the whole thing should look like that. Now from there, we're going to make an equation from all of this, because your graph should have looked exactly like that. And now we're going to have A, and then it's either sine or cos, and then B and C and D. So note first the A and the D, the easy ones to find. We know we're right up there at the top. That is your maximum, and that maximum height's 50. We knew the minimum down there was at, sorry, that shouldn't say 30. That should say 0. Max minus min over 2 is 50 minus 0 over 2. Ignore that 30. This does say 0. Old news, old thing. Mr. Klein made a mistake. Max minus min over 2, 50 minus 0, which is 50. Our A should be 25. Our D, likewise, max plus min over 2. That's 50 plus 0 over 2, which is 50 divided by 2, 25. Both A and D will be 25 for this. So as we go to the next one, we see there's a 25 for A, there's a 25 for D. Now that's if it's a sine equation. Remember, it could also be a cosine equation. And whether it's a sine or a cosine, it's done exactly the same as far as A and D. The next thing we can find now is B. And B, we remember, is just 2 pi over the period. Well, the period is how long a graph takes to repeat itself. Well, a period is how long a graph takes to repeat itself. How long does this graph take to repeat itself? It takes 4 seconds. So there is your B. It's 2 pi over 4. Still going good. We now have 2 possible equations because the 2 pi over 4 goes where the B is. So now it's 25 sine 2 pi over 4 x minus c plus 25, or 25 cosine 2 pi over 4 x minus c over 25. Those are the 2 options we have. The 25 at the beginning and at the end, that was a plus b max minus min over 2 and max plus min over 2. The 2 pi over b over the period is how we got b. And now we can look. Look at the shape of your graph. Well, what we're looking for, we are looking at the shape of this graph to get our phase shift. Remember, there are two types of sine graphs. There's a regular sine graph, sine go up, sine go down, man. And there is a negative sine graph. The negative sine graph starts in the middle of your graph and it goes down. Well, then you also have cosine graphs. Cosines start at the top, and you have a negative cosine. A negative cosine starts at the bottom. So you could look and say, hey, look at my graph that I made with Mr. Klein. Mr. Klein's graph is definitely, if you look at the fourth one there, it is, that's right, it's a negative cosine graph in shape. So you would need no phase shift if it's a negative cosine. But remember what these shapes look like. What if you wanted to make it a sine equation? Where does sine start? Sine starts right in the middle and then goes up. So look at the graph you made. Do you see a point that's in the middle and then your graph goes up from there? That's right after the 1 second mark. So we're going to have a look at that. There's your big graph. If I'm looking right here, see, if I start here with my graph, because remember, this wheel's going to go around over and over and over again. Mr. Klein can bike a long way with a rock in his tire. If you're looking at that right there, it goes up, it go down. You're starting in the middle. This is a sine graph if you start it right there. Notice it starts when x is 1. That's why we have a phase shift of 1 if you're making it a sine graph. Now, let's imagine you want to start right there at the top. What kind of graph is that starts at the top? That is a cosine graph starting at the very top. So if you're making this a cosine graph, everything is the same except the phase shift. It's x minus 2 this time. Because see how you are starting at 2 if you wanted to start at the top. Well, what if you wanted to start in the middle but head down? That's this dot, the third one I've drawn there. I'm in the middle of the graph, but heading down. If you remember, that is a negative sine graph. So if you wanted to make a negative sine equation, you just put a negative in front of the 25. And now it's x minus 3 as your phase shift because we're starting our graph at 3. But what if you wanted to start at the very bottom of the graph down there? If you start at the bottom of a graph, that is a negative cosine graph, so you do not need any phase shift. A, D, and B are always the same for all of these things. The only thing that ever changes is the phase shift. And so you change your phase shift based on where you want to start your graph. If you start in the middle and go up, find your phase shift, and that's a sine graph. Start in the middle and go down, you find your phase shift, that's a negative sine graph. If you're starting at the very top, that's a cosine graph, and if you're starting at the very bottom, that's a negative cosine graph. So there are your equations from Mr. Klein's bike. Your final answer then, you will make a trig graph. That would have given you 2 marks. It would have looked beautiful like that. You make a sine equation and a cos equation for 2 marks. You would have got any one of those 4 equations. Excellent. And you brag. And you're going to say the amplitude's 25, the period's 4, phase shift. That will depend on your equation. You brag about your phase shift based on these equations because you will be making 2. And then your vertical displacement 25. That is how you're going to be marked on these. I have lots more for you, and I'm giving you 4 days to do it. That's right. 4 wonderful, wonderful days. So if a question's out of 5 marks, it's because it would have been 2 marks for your graph. You're asked to make a sine equation and a cos equation. So you can make a positive sine and a negative cos. You could make a negative sine and a positive cos. You could make them both positive. You make them both negative, doesn't matter. You'll need 2 different equations. So remember how we do these. Sketch a circle. Fill in the radius. Fill in the center. Get all those things done. Fill in the time intervals. Now we're able to find those points. At 0 seconds, I'm here. After 1 second, I'm here. After 2 seconds, you get, or whatever the time intervals are, you get those points. You then plot those points on a lovely trig graph. Make sure your graph that you draw is circular. Once you've got your circular graph, you then make an equation for that graph. Max plus min over 2. That's A. Sorry, that's D. Max minus min over 2. That's A. 2 pi over the period. That's B. And then use the appropriate phase shift to get that working. And then after you got your equation, you would, of course, brag about that graph. And life is great. So here is homework assignment number 15. It will be 20. What? 20 marks. And yes, I know, sad news for many of you. This is your last homework assignment from me. Ever. What? It's only May. How can this? What are we going to do in June? You'll see, and it will be so fun. But this is your last homework assignment you will be getting online. The last time I'm going to assign homework. You are in school for 2,500 days in your life from kindergarten till the end of grade 12. And in that time, you got about 15 days left of actual in-school time. That's exciting. 20, but today is done for you now, so it's 19. We don't have class for 3 days. Anyways, you'll see what I mean. I'm going to send you your assignment number 15 today in an email. You have 96 hours to do 4 questions. That's right. 4 questions, just like the one I gave you here with Mr. Klein's bike. I'll be giving you 4 of those. So for all 4 of them, you are to make a lovely graph. You are to make 2 equations, 1 sine and 1 cos. You are to brag about the 4 things you know about your trig graphs, and that will be great. No class Wednesday. Have it ready before Friday at 9. We will mark it together. So it's going to be one of those things where we get together for our final class. We mark things together. So if you could make an effort, please. We have 17 out of the 28 of you watching right now. Actually, I'm one of those 17. I have 2 computers going. So there's 16 students watching this assignment right now. Just a little over half the class. So for those that do like to watch these on video, you can watch them on video, of course, afterwards again. But if we could try to all be in class 9 a.m. Friday for your last class. No class Wednesday, as I'm giving you basically 1 question a day to work on. So I know it's supposed to be 3 hours in a whole week. That assignment should not take you 3 hours, but we will do that. We will see you Friday for your final class of the year. And what we will then do, as I have mentioned for some of you, June 1st, that is 1 week from today, I am back in school full time. So I will be there every day, and I will have sign-up times for you to come in and get help with questions if you want. At the beginning of each week, I'm going to be giving you a review package for each of the 3 units that we covered. So for that first week of June, you will be reviewing all your logarithms. I will give you a review package with an answer key. For the second week of June, we are reviewing transformations. I'll give you a transformations review package, and you will review that for the week. The third week of June I am giving you a trigonometry review package, and you're working on that for that third week. At any time during those 3 weeks, you are welcome to come in and sit in class personally. I think we're allowed a maximum of 6 people at a time in the classroom, and I'll have half-hour shifts for you to sign up for. If you want a full hour, you can sign up for 2 shifts in a row and say, I'm coming in for an hour. But it's not going to be a free for all where everyone's just coming and going as they please. You will need to have to sign in. That goes for all your classes. Now, I don't know if all the teachers are doing half-hour shifts. I know I am. Some I have already heard that you're signing up for a day and you're sitting there for 3 hours. But those are more geared for classes that are upstairs, in between Mr. Boulat and Mr. Lee's room, and the subject rhymes with chemistry. So if you are wanting to do that for those 7-8 hour classes every day, you're welcome to do that as well. I will see you Friday morning at 9 a.m. I'll take just a few minutes here and then email you your lovely assignment. Health and happiness to all of you. Get these 4 questions done. You do not need to send them in. We will go over them together on Friday. Your last homework assignment in math for marks ever. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. Thank you. And good night from NBC News.